I just found myself stopped with museum goers sort of flowing around me. And it was like I felt a hand on my shoulder almost, a presence. I felt a knowing inside myself. I felt very connected. I felt in awe of the story and of her, and I really wanted to bring this remarkable woman into literature as a character.
Welcome to the True Fiction Project, a podcast series that explores the origins of fiction. Every week, we begin with an interview, nonfiction, followed by a creative piece, fiction, inspired by something from the interview. The idea is to demonstrate, of course, that fiction is born out of our life experiences. Now, here's your host, storyteller, author, public speaker, health and wellness expert, Reenita Hora.
Welcome to the True Fiction Project. I'm your host, Reenita Hora. Thrilled to introduce today's guest, Pamela Reitman, who is an award-winning author. She is based in Healdsburg, California, but travels to San Francisco frequently, where I live, and she also writes historical fiction. So we are here to discuss her book, which I'm going to let her talk about. It is called Charlotte. I'm pronouncing it wrong, so you know what? Let's bring in Pamela. Hi, Pamela. Welcome to the project.
Hi, Reenita. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for being on the show today. And, I'm so tempted to say Charlotte, but I know I'm pronouncing it wrong. So let's start by you telling us the name of your book.
The title of my book is Charlotte Salomon Paints Her Life. And now I say Charlotte all the time, so I will probably be saying Charlotte, but that is the correct pronunciation, Charlotte.
Okay, well, it sounds so much more elegant, I think.
It does.
So I am always really intrigued by historical fiction. I write historical fiction, but your book, Charlotte Salomon Paints Her Life, goes deeper because this is biographical literary fiction. So can you explain to our listeners what that means?
Yes, biographical literary fiction is fiction that's based on a true life.
Mm-hmm.
So historical fiction may be in a period, and all the characters are fictional. Biographical fiction is based on a life. And this is the life of Charlotte Salomon.
Of course. So obviously, one can only begin to imagine and understand the amount of research that has gone into this. But I'm very curious as a writer, because this is still fiction, biographical fiction, but fiction, how much license do you have to fictionalize? How does it work?
Well, that is the question, because one wants to be clear about what one is doing. And the thing is, historical fiction and biographical fiction, they are a melding of two literary forms: the historical, which is history, and the fictional, which is comes from the imagination. And they're put together, so they're both blended. I think in terms of deciding what you can change, what you have to keep, that is done piecemeal. This character, this situation, did she really attend this exhibit? Was she really in Gur camp? Was this man a lover or not a lover? So I think there are, and I do have a slideshow presentation, and in that I address the questions of fact and fiction, because I think especially with fiction that is related to the Holocaust, that is very important for the author to be transparent about the decisions that she or he has made.
If you could unpack that for us, when you say writing about the Holocaust, it's even more important to be intentional about the decisions you make. Do explain.
I feel like because we're coming to a time when the survivors, there's very few of them, and we're moving into a historical period where there'll be no survivors. And to me, that puts a special burden on the writer, because there's no one to check with. So that would be the simple way to put it.
Right. So a lot is then left up to imagination, I'm guessing. How did you tackle this in your book? Could you give us an example of a decision or, decisions that you made that were difficult that you had to be intentional about?
Yes, I will. I can do that. So there is a character in the book. His name is Wolf Abrams, and he was very influential for Charlotte. He came into her home as a voice teacher, and he was training her stepmother, and he was enamored by the stepmother.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point where she got disgusted with him and threw him out. But Charlotte was kind of waiting in the wings, and she started to follow him around in cafes and listen to him. She was very impressed by his philosophy. And he had been in the trenches in World War II and had suffered greatly there. She showed him her work, and he was moved by it, but she was obsessed by him. So the fact or fiction question is, were they lovers? And that's what people might want to know. So here's what I did. I looked at her paintings, and there are paintings of explicit where you might make that a conclusion where there are two bodies. Her body is underneath his body in a watercolor gouache, floating in a background. And there's many like that, and they're beautiful. And her biographer assumed that they were lovers and just kind of wrote the biography that way. But when the stepmother, who survived the war, was interviewed many years later, decades later, she said, "Oh no, those paintings were just flights of fancy. They were not lovers." So what was I going to do? Am I going to make them lovers or not lovers? I think that I could defend that either way. I chose to make them not lovers, in case you were going to ask me that question.
Okay.
And the reason I did that is because he was more, in my mind, a mentor to her. And she relied on his belief in her. And while they might have been lovers, I didn't think it would serve my story to add that dimension of their relationship into the story. I thought it would be distracting, and I really wanted to make the mentorship stronger.
I see. So, very, very interesting. And when you talk about the story, very basic question, I have to ask, what is the story? And really, a deeper question is, why did you choose to portray this story through this book, given that there was already a biography out there?
The story is about a young woman who is struggling to become a serious modernist artist while she's in exile, a Jewish German young girl, actually, who had been an art student. And she's struggling to become an artist while she's in exile in the south of France. And while the Nazis invading France and coming closer and closer, and she struggles to create this masterpiece and get it into the hands of safekeeping before she's captured by the Nazis. That's the story I wrote. The biography is very interesting, and I relied on it a lot because I think that historical fiction, biographical fiction, is very different than biography. When the biographer comes up against facts or the lack of facts, she can't go any further with the story. But when the writer comes up to that edge where there's no facts, everything opens up. Then the writer gets to do what she wants, to imagine what might have happened. And any set of facts, like my story is only one story. Somebody could have told her story differently. I focus on the way that art heals the trauma of great suffering, because this was a woman who had lost her mother when she was very young. She lost her home when she had to leave Berlin by herself and everything that she had known. And when she was in the south of France, she found out that all the women in her family had committed suicide, a couple of men too. And the women included her mother. And so she was really traumatized. And also then the war that's raging. So to me, it's also about how her making of this masterpiece, Life or Theater, was a way for her to transform her suffering. I wouldn't say heal it. I don't know that she could have been healed. At least there was some transformation in that creation.
Mm.
Yeah.
So certainly very strong female autobiographical elements, healing, and I know that you work a lot in healing and meditation. How did you discover Charlotte Salomon? Of course, I can guess what drew you to the story, but you tell us in your words.
Okay. You're doing better about saying Charlotte,
Yes,
Reenita.
I'm trying, being intentional.
I saw an exhibit of her painting. They came to the Contemporary Jewish Museum in San Francisco. And by the way, before I moved into Healdsburg a couple years ago, I had been living in San Francisco since the 1970s.
Mm.
And so I had been introduced to her before, but I thought, okay, I'm going to go see these paintings because I'll never have a chance. So I think listeners might want and viewers might want to know what life or theater is, if I could
Yes,
just
yes,
digress a
please
little
do.
bit. Yeah, the advertising for it talks about it being a monumental and a masterpiece, and that might people might think like, oh, it's like a really big painting or something. No, she made 1,325 paintings in 1 year, watercolor gouache paintings. She was alone and without identity papers when she did that. Then in the next year, she edited it down to around 769 paintings. She added dialogue, which she wrote on transparencies or write directly on the painting itself. And she added musical prompts that she wanted the viewer to hear. And it became like an operetta. This was a huge work. And in it, she exposes the suicides that had occurred in her family, which was radical and dangerous in her time. So when I saw the work, it was not the full 769. It was a selection of around 250 at the museum. And they were on the gallery walls, and I went in and out of the gallery. And there was a lot of educational material about her life. And I just found myself stopped with museum goers sort of flowing around me. And it was like I felt a hand on my shoulder almost, a presence. I felt a knowing inside myself. I felt very connected. I felt in awe of the story and of her, and I really wanted to bring this remarkable woman into literature as a
Mm.
character.
Absolutely. I can see why. I mean, it makes perfect sense as you describe it. Now, this life story that she painted and produced, audio as well, music, when did she do that and where was she? This is not when she was in France, surely.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I think I need to clarify. She did not produce it.
Oh, she
I
did
mean,
not. Okay.
she didn't make a production. She was captured by the Nazis and she was murdered in Auschwitz. And her work was discovered by her father and stepmother after the war. It was in two big packages, all these paintings. They held on to it for a long time. Eventually, they gave it to the Jewish Museum of Amsterdam. And then eventually, it actually was performed as an operetta,
Hmm.
as an as a ballet,
Mhm.
as a theater piece, and finally a true full-scale opera was made and debuted in Salzburg in 2017, I think. So, but
Amazing.
she just made the paintings, and it was almost like being the director, putting notes on it so that somebody could figure out how to produce it.
Amazing. It's almost like she had the foresight to know that this would travel and represent not just her story, but the story of so many, and so many who are no more. Where can we find this book and your work and any other work related to it? You know, what sort of links or social media or, other things can you give our audience?
Okay, so the book should, can I show it, hold it
Of
up so
course.
people can see
Love
the
that.
cover?
Oh, look at that. Yes.
And that is an oil painting that Charlotte made of herself in 1940 when she was in the south of France.
Hmm.
And I have a slideshow presentation called Revisiting Charlotte Salomon, and that's available as an in-person presentation. And where a slideshow doesn't work like in a bookstore, I'm available to talk about Charlotte Salomon Paints Her Life and start a conversation. And I also bring with me an exhibit of quality art prints of Charlotte's work to my talks, and they are a big hit. I have two of them behind me here. There's
Hmm.
one, and then there's the other one. I'm not sure how easy it is to see it, but they are stunning works. And for all the book groups out there, I could do that too in person where possible or on Zoom. And for all of those things, you can send a message to me through a contact page on my website, which is www.pamelareitman.com. And the novel, Charlotte Salomon Paints Her Life, that can be obtained wherever books are sold. And I am also on Facebook.
And of course, we're going to have links to all of that good stuff in the show notes. So, Pam, you are going to read us an excerpt. Tee it up for us. What part of the book are you going to read? Give us a little bit of context.
Okay, so this is a little bit into the book it starts when she leaves Berlin for the south of France. So she's been there for a little while, and she's sitting with a friend of hers who has shown up there at the chateau that she had known in Berlin, and the friend is asking her if she has anybody special in her life, and she's thinking about Wolf Abrams. So this is her kind of a flashback to that, what's going through her mind as she's sitting and having tea in the garden with her friend.
And now to the premise of the True Fiction Project, which of course is to create fiction out of nonfiction.
The only thing she knew for sure was that in his eyes she was an artist. Her mind drifted away from the steeping tea to the day she'd left Berlin when he had helped her onto the train. Her parents had sacrificed black market extras to scrape together the funds for a private compartment. Standing inside it, he had held her close, tightening his arms around her. Then he loosened his embrace and held her at arm's length. You are a sensitive artist, and you have had to grow up without your mother, grieving an endless loss. It hasn't been easy, I'm sure, yet you have made something from it. You are not who you have thought you are. You are something more, much, much more. Much, much more. The words had dropped to her core as into the bottom of a well, not dry, but containing stagnant water, and they purified it. The water words spread through her like watercolor, washing out as far as she could imagine, saturating her idea of herself. Fragile of the mind, unworthy of the life she had been given. And that old notion began to dissolve. Knowing that you are so much more than your suffering, that is how you will do it. She heard the words without understanding, yet she felt them to be true. Now, I will tell you something you are to remember always, dear Charlotte. In silent inquiry, she looked up into his eyes, black as coal, warm as embers. He spoke slowly. You are a genius, and I believe in you.
Wonderful, Pamela. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show, and I can't wait to delve into the novel full on. Is there anything else you would like to say to our audiences before we wrap up?
I would just say, if you buy my book, please write a review for it as well. Put it on Amazon or Goodreads or wherever reviews are. And thank you so much, Reenita, for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Such a delight to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us. That is Pamela Reitman. She is a Jewish Book Council Network author, an award-winning writer with numerous publications in literary journals, news outlets, magazines, talking about her book, Charlotte Salomon Paints Her Life. Over 2 months on Amazon's hot new releases for biographical literary fiction, Kirkus called this novel a vividly detailed rendering of real life caught in a maelstrom of 20th century horror. This is the True Fiction Project, and I am your host, Reenita Hora.
Thank you for listening to the True Fiction Project with Reenita Hora. Be sure to subscribe to the newsletter to receive more inspiring stories showing how fiction is born from our everyday experiences. For more information, visit www.truefictionproject.com.